Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics. My name is Hunter Fireherm, and I am a member of the Dole Institute Student Advisory Board, the official student group of the Institute. The Student Advisory Board is a bipartisan group whose members can access many great opportunities through their involvement with the Institute, including volunteering at programs and networking with our special guests. If you are a student and would like to join, please contact us by emailing dolesab@ku.edu, or simply just speak with a student worker after the program. After the program, we will have some time for the audience to ask questions. If you have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand, and a student worker with a microphone will come to you. Please stand if you are able to, and ask just one brief question. We have a loop hearing section at each program designated by a sign, as well as a limited number of listening devices. If you have questions about the loop system, or if at any time during the program you have difficulty hearing, please alert one of our staff members or student volunteers. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to please turn off your cell phones. And now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Dawn Hyder-Markle, Professor and Chair of the Political Science Department here at the University of Kansas.
Good evening, and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics for our program, A Powerful Prevailing Truth, Women in Politics, a Century After Suffrage. I am Dawn Hyder-Markle, Professor and Chair of Political Science. The Department of Political Science is delighted to co-sponsor tonight's program with the Dole Institute as part of a series of campus events to celebrate the 100th anniversary of suffrage. If you're interested in additional events during the spring semester, please Google KU Suffrage, and you'll find a few more events throughout the semester. Also, don't miss the special exhibit, What Would a Woman Offer Her Country? Elizabeth Dole's groundbreaking, trailblazing life of service, featured at the newly renovated Elizabeth Dole Gallery and Reading Room just off of Hanson Hall here in the Dole Institute. The exhibit will be on view through May 2020. This evening's interview will be conducted by Dole Institute Director Bill Lacey. Tonight's guests are Dr. Barbara Ballard, the Senior Associate Director of the Dole Institute. She is a member of the Kansas Legislature, having served since 1992. Representative Students Cannon, who is serving her fourth term in the Kansas State House of Representatives, she serves on the Bob Bethel CanCare Oversight Committee. Commissioner Vicki Schmidt, the current Kansas Insurance Commissioner, she previously served as a state senator. Representative Ponca Wee-Victors, who has served in the Kansas House of Representatives since 2010, she is the first Native American woman to serve in the Kansas Legislature. Please join me in welcoming Barbara Ballard, Susan Cannon, Vicki Schmidt, and Ponca Wee-Victors.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is going to be an exciting and interesting discussion. Ladies, if we can start, tell us about your upbringing and your education and how you got your start in politics. Don't all of you start at once.
Who wants to go?
Go ahead, Susan.
Oh, okay, I guess I'm start. I was volunteered to start.
Thank you, Susan.
I'm Susan Cannon. I'm originally from Salina. I attended Bethany College, and my degree was in psychology. But I took a lot of political classes at that time and had a lot of interest in issues. But my big step forward was I married into a very politically involved family. And my father-in-law ran for governor in '74 and lost to Bennett and less than 500 votes statewide. I think it was a five-way race, so similar to this last governor's race. So it with marrying into a family with a lot of political activity, I already had the interest, but then that gave me a lot of opportunity for debate. But as a mom, it was not ever the right opportunity for me for about 20 years. I needed to stay home, raise my family. I lived far enough away from Topeka. But when my husband finished medical school, we moved to Beloit, Kansas, and we've been there for 32 years. So I was very involved in the community, stayed involved in local politics, did a few things statewide, volunteerism-wise, and then the opportunity opened up to run for a seat, and that's when I jumped in. But I always tell people that the best training that I had to run for office was that I grew up with 3 brothers and I learned how to fight.
Well, my name is Vicki Schmidt. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and my parents were blue-collar workers. My dad was a telephone repairman. I was the first one to graduate from college in my family, and I came to KU. I had worked in a pharmacy in high school and decided that I wanted to go to pharmacy school, so I came here. The education, and we were talking about this at our table tonight, that the pharmacy school was, pardon the pun, but very prescriptive. And you had, your core subjects that you took the first 2 years, and then hopefully got into pharmacy school, and then you had 3 years of pharmacy school. I took no art history, no political science. I took nothing fun. I mean, it was fun for me because I love chemistry and math and things, but nothing fun. And I married my high school sweetheart after my freshman year of college. We, went on and he went to medical school and residency, and I worked as a pharmacist. And 1996 rolled around. Governor Graves had appointed me to the Board of Pharmacy. He forever changed my trajectory in life at that junction. Would have never thought I would run for political office, let alone a statewide office. But I enjoyed the interaction with the legislature on most days as a Board of Pharmacy member, and told my husband if there was ever an opportunity to run, I was going to do it. And he did what most spouses do. He nodded and said, okay, what's for dinner? And, we moved on. And in 2004, there was an open Senate seat, and our youngest son was in high school, was a senior in high school and was getting ready to go away to college. And I said, I think I want to run for that seat. And then he took me a little more serious. From there I served 14 years in the Senate, survived some really tough races, and then a little harder sell to run for insurance commissioner. That was a statewide race. And that was 17,000 miles of driving around Kansas in the summertime. And that was a really great experience. So I have enjoyed it. The world of pharmacy, obviously, I'm going to assume that most of you, if not all of you, have had a prescription filled. It's important to get the right drug to the right person with the right directions and all of those things. In the world of politics, there's black and white, and then all this massive gray area where everything happens. And that was really tough for me in the beginning.
Good evening. My name is Ponkawee Victors, and I'm a member of the Ponca tribe of Oklahoma and the Tohono-O'odham Nation of Arizona. This is my beautiful mother here tonight with me, Sandra Victors. Born and raised in Wichita, Kansas. My dad's from the state of Arizona. My mom, born and raised in Wichita. They met at Haskell Indian Nations University. Back then it was called Haskell Indian Junior College. So I'm very thankful because of Haskell I'm here. And born and raised in Wichita, the story is that long time ago during aircraft, they went to my reservation down in Ponca City, Oklahoma area and recruited some people to work in the aircraft. And my grandmother and grandpa came from Oklahoma to Wichita. And that's where we've been ever since. I have an undergraduate degree in biology from Newman University in Wichita, and I have my master's degree in public administration from Wichita State. And I'm currently working on my doctorate's degree in education from Creighton University. And so don't ask me why, but I'm almost done, thank God. We have to be on the floor at 11, and these past 4 years I've been getting up at 4:30 to do homework and paper, and now I'm on my dissertation. My dissertation is on the rise of Native American women running for office. So I'm interested in that. How I got involved in politics, I come from a long line of chiefs from my mother's side, the Ponca tribe. One of my many great grandfathers, Chief Standing Bear of the Ponca tribe, he was the first one to see justice in the Supreme Court because they talk about the Trail of Tears. Well, we were originally from Nebraska, but the government made us walk from Nebraska to Oklahoma, which is Indian territory, back in the 1800s, and his son passed away, and he wanted to take him back to Nebraska to bury him, but the government said, no, you have to stay on the reservation. You're not allowed to take your son back and bury him. And so he took him to court, and he didn't even know English. He got an interpreter, and he won. And so his statue is now at the U.S. Capitol, and I got to see it in September. And so I always say it's in my blood. And growing up hearing stories like that of my grandfathers fighting for rights, and also that persuaded me that someday, maybe I, somehow could be a leader. And I grew up with humble beginnings, went to public school my whole life. Back then, I didn't see a lot of role models that looked like me, what I wanted to do. And so I wrote to our governor then, Governor Finney, when I was in school, and I told her how I felt unsafe eating my lunch in school because of the Columbine shootings. And when I got older, I did an internship with the Senate of Indian Affairs Committee in D.C., and I told then Senator John McCain, who was the chairman of the committee, maybe someday I'll run for office. And he said, well, why don't you run for office now? I just completed my master's degree. And I said, really? Maybe when I'm 80. And he said, no, do it now while you're young. He said, this is what you're going to do. And he gave me a long list. I followed the list, and here I am, 10 years in office.
That's awesome. If you'll excuse me a second, I have to interject because I was talking to your mom before the program tonight. And is it your mom that used to do that? Okay. She told me that her mom used to do some things for Senator Dole. And anytime Senator Dole would meet her out on the campaign trail or something, he would say, Ruby, make me some fry bread, which is a Native American bread. And that's so fascinating. So thank you for sharing that. Sorry, Barbara, I had to pass that along.
No, anytime, Sandra, anytime. Well, I am a product of a military family. My father was stationed in different places, but my mother didn't travel much with him. But when he went to Hawaii, and that was so far, and we were going to be there for 3 years, we did. And I can only remember getting on a huge ship, going all the way over to Hawaii. We were in Hawaii for 3 tours of duty. So when I got to Hawaii, I was barely 10, and when we left, I was almost 16. So I was actually raised in Hawaii. And I still go once a year to a certain degree, so I can continue to see. And my godmother actually lives there. She's since passed away. And so I would try to always go down and do that. But being a military person, and we were at Schofield Barracks, 25th Division, and my father was a master sergeant. And as a result, you towed the line. And that was something that we always did in many ways. So going to Hawaii was very different because it would have been at a time when there was lots of discrimination going on and segregation and everything else. And being in the military, you were somewhat sheltered from there. And we lived in a little small town called Wahiawa, which is really like 45 minutes from Honolulu. And I had I think what I call a normal childhood, and just lived in a paradise in many ways, but spent all my time babysitting and taking care of other people's children in many ways. We left when I was 16 and we moved to El Paso, Texas. So to go from Hawaii to El Paso, Texas, and so you're into the desert and everything else. I went to a Catholic women's high school, Loretto Academy, and from there I went to Webster College, which was also by Loretto nuns, and it was a Catholic women's college. So I'm a product of girls' high school and women's college. And for all of my life, as a student, I saw women being in control of what really happened, because the president was, the dean was, most of your professors were, and you had an occasional priest would teach you, and then you had some lay people, especially around the areas of science and math and along those areas. When I finished college, I went to Chicago, and from there, I'd met my husband right after graduation, and he went to Vietnam, and he came back, and literally I met him, dated him 13 days, and then he went to Vietnam. He came back in July, and we were married in January, and we're still married. And so that was that, and we moved to Monterey, California, and so I was back on the water side. And I taught 2nd grade, 5th grade, and 8th grade, and I taught music because my undergraduate degree at Webster College was performing arts and music education. And to this day, I still use my singing, and I still do a lot of the music and everything that we do. From there, I would simply say I had served in California on the Archdiocese School District, their whole diocese, and it was 345 schools, and we were on what I call their school board, but we divided into regions because there's so many schools. And we came then my husband came to Fort Riley, Kansas, and from Fort Riley, Kansas, we stayed with, it was just a year, but it lasted longer than a year. So then our son and I came in. When our son came, he was barely a year old. So he was in Korea during the time. When he left, I was 5 months pregnant. He came back for a month. When he came back again, my son was almost 10 months old. And so I know what it's like to be a single parent, but not have financial worries. I also know what it's like to kind of manage your household and do all kinds of things by yourself and not have financial worries. I use that because a lot of people are single heads of households, but they don't have this other component that will help them. You're still by yourself, you're still lonely, but you can manage along those lines. From there, I was on the school board here in Lawrence for 8 years. And I had said I would serve 8, and I did just that. And for those of you who might remember Jessie Branson had the 44th district. And Jessie was going to retire, and she said, "Have you ever thought about it?" And I said, "Nope." And we looked at it, and she said, "Well, think about it." And I told my husband when I got home, and he looks at me, and he's looking right at me, and he says, "Yeah, you really should think about it." And, as a result, I ran, I won, and then I ran another 4 years. I was the first African-American woman to have served on the Lawrence School Board. I was the first African-American president that they had. And so, it's like you make sure you do things right because everybody's looking at you. And if you don't do it right, there's a problem. So from there, after 8 years, I was just going to retire. And Jessie Branson was retiring for 44th District. And so I thought about it and decided to run for it. And I represent the 44th District. And it has been more than I ever expected. Because I buy into a philosophy with Shirley Chisholm that service is the rent you pay for occupying space on earth. And I have done that in the legislature. It has been my honor to do that. And then I found out, really, I was the first African-American woman to ever be elected. And someone says, "Well, how many ran?" Well, no one ever ran before. So it's one of those things where you can go along and do what you want, but you make sure you do it in such a way that other people can come behind you and there's not a lot of negative reactions.
Why is it important for women to be involved in politics, and
Why should we try to encourage more women to get involved?
I think we bring a different perspective at times. I believe my experience has been that we compromise better at times. I think we, many of us are mothers, have run households. We've learned how to negotiate with small children. So sometimes that can translate to help you.
Maybe.
It is I think politics is, I think we make a few mistakes along the way in our assumptions. We want more women in politics, but what that sometimes means to us, we want more women that think like us, that think like me, to be in politics. And we need women of all types that bring diverse backgrounds and thought processes and things with them. And I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy when we try to encourage others to run for office. I think the world of politics is a lot different now than it was 16 years ago when I started my political career. It wasn't as cruel as it is today. I find that in talking to others, not just women, but other people, to try to encourage them to run for office is a lot more difficult today than it was even 10 years ago.
I might add that it's a citizen legislature, so if women aren't represented, then it's not a full representation of the citizenry of the state. We need men and women, black and white, all ages. We need everybody, all the perspectives.
I always say if you're not at the table, then you're going to be at the on the menu. And so we need all women from different backgrounds, like my colleagues have said, and it's important. And it can be intimidating too when you come into that room and there's a bunch of males around. I always say pale, male, and stale sometimes because you just can't. We all don't think alike, but yet if you bring up a different perspective, then they're like, oh, I never thought of that. And growing up, I'm the only girl. I have two older brothers. My mom taught me how to be a good multitasker. And so I have many plates, that I'm working on and different things. And I believe, my mother always says, let a woman run this country. And let's see the difference that we can do. So I'm very blessed because I grew up with a lot of strong women in my household, and so that's how I can go in and sit at that table. But yet, I got to encourage other women, to run for office and to have a seat at the table. And I think it's changing because my mother always says, you make it look easy, and it's not easy some days. And I have to be real with them of what it's really like. But don't give up. You just have to keep in there and voicing your opinion and until you get that respect, and then things start moving along. So that's how I see it. Is we all need to be at the table making these important decisions on health care or education or foster care or whatever the issue may be.
I would say I think you have to be a role model. And it's not like you have to be pristine and everything else, but people need to see other people that look like you. They also need to know that women have a perspective out there that people are listening to. And most women shy away from running for public office. In fact, you've probably heard this story umpteen times. They have to be asked 6 or 7 times before they'll actually run. Because number one, they don't like conflict. They think that the political arena is really kind of a nasty area, and they don't want to get into that area. But once they do, they find out that if a woman runs, she will win. But a lot of times they're just not interested. So we have to start early with trying to get them interested in wanting to, whether it's student council, whether it's student government in college, or something that they realize that it's very similar to that. you're making rules. You're governing what happens here. How do you move on to this and then the other? But part of it is they have to see and hear you articulate what they know or what they believe in. If they don't hear it, they don't believe there's a voice there. And I think we have to be that voice. It's not better than the male voice. It's just another voice to give another perspective for someone to consider this or to consider that. And you may not want to be that role model, and you hear athletes say that all the time, but you are. If you do it and you speak up and people know you're working to make a difference, you're working on their behalf, that you're willing, your skin has got to be thick and you're willing to take the hits, because it's important that you make that difference. And women need to know that they can make that difference. And it doesn't have to always be big. It can be small. But you have to always be there to know that there is a presence, just like you want diversity. And diversity is not just race. Diversity is all kinds of things. And I think women bring that to the table because they will mediate. They will talk about it. They want a win-win. They don't care if they win. Men want to win. Women they are win-win, and when we both win, we got something out of this. And that's how you make it work.
What do each of you like the most about being involved in politics, and what do you like the least about being involved in politics?
I like the fact that I have a voice and that I can get in the middle of it. And I'm a risk taker. And I mean, I know the difference between going out on a limb and falling and going just enough to see what's going on. But, you know, and I think that's important. But you can make a difference. If somebody says, will you help do this? You may not be able to do exactly what they want, but they know you are helping and you can. And I don't care how small it is, but that's what's really important. You say, I want to represent you, that's what you do. You try and represent that person or that idea or that bill or what's going on. What I don't like the most about it is that you have to work really hard to get just one little thing done. Because there's always somebody saying, no, you can't do it. And they want to just kind of keep it down. I mean, they sort of like don't want to move on it, but you just hang in there. And that's what women don't like. That's what I do like, because it's sort of like, if you don't think I can do it, watch me. You know, and that's how you get it done.
Go ahead. So what I like is being in my community. And I have several events in my community, like Back to School Drive for the undocumented community. I have ice cream socials, end-of-school ice cream socials. I have an elderly program, and during Christmas I dress up like Santa or Mrs. Claus, and I hand out like gloves and scarves. That's what I like. I visit the reservations here. You know, we're getting ready for a big voter registration drive. So I like working directly with the people. That's what I enjoy. The things what I don't enjoy is the long nights we're on the House floor, because it can get very political and mudslinging. And sometimes I feel like I'm just caught in the middle of everything, and I see a lot of tantrums. And I see like a lot of people kind of forget who they are and where they come from. And that's sad, because they're representing them, and that's the least thing that, you know, I don't look forward to. Is a lot of times politics gets in the way too much, and we forget about the people that we're really serving. And so that's what keeps me going is, you know, I do my things at the Capitol, but on the weekends I go home. You know, I'm with my family. My mother always has a saying that when you step foot in my house, you know, you leave that modern world out there. And in my house, we speak our language, we eat our native food. you know, she already told me, no, I better not hear you crying up there. So my mom's very strong, and so it's good to get that grounded again and be in my community and always constantly working on something in my community. But the least thing I would have to say is to see a lot of people who represent different diverse communities or different areas, they kind of forget that up there and the real reason of why we're there, not working together. So that's how I feel.
I became a pharmacist because I wanted to help people. The healthcare profession was a perfect fit for me with that. And I loved helping people behind the counter and with their meds and answering questions and talking to physicians and doing that. I really thought that was a good fit for me. In the world of politics, I don't see it as that much different. I'm still helping people, just in a different way. And I think that servant leadership is the best kind of leadership there is, and I'm still able to help people. I will never forget the phone call I got when I'd been in the Senate for quite a few years, and got a phone call at home, and the conversation, I said hello. The conversation started with the gentleman saying, "Hi, my name is," and I could still tell you his name, but I won't. But anyway, "I've never voted for you, but I need your help." And I said, "Well, you're in luck, because once I'm elected, I serve everyone, all 76,000 of you. And, you know, and so tell me what you need, and let's get to work on the problem." You know, I told my husband how that conversation started, and he said, I would have hung up the phone. And I said, "That's why you don't get a run. It's also why you don't talk." No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Don't tell him that. I'm just kidding. But you know, it is true. I mean, I like that part of the job. In the insurance department, it's a different set of help that people need. And I know that around the office, I'm famous for saying I don't always like the answer we get, but we're always going to get you an answer. And most of the time, that's what people want. I mean, sure, they want a good outcome. It's not always assured, no matter what the question is. It's not always assured, but it is something that you deserve an answer, and to put it to rest so you can move on. I think what I like, there's the gamesmanship is probably what I like least. But then I thought about saying that as they were talking, and I thought, but sometimes I really enjoy it. You know, you can, and Representative Ballard, I'm going to tell a story real quick about you. We officed on the same floor for a lot of years, and I admired Representative Ballard for a lot of years with her style, her leadership, her grace, her poise. When she goes down to speak to her colleagues in the House, it's worth listening to. It's thoughtful, it's considerate, and I really admired that. But I asked her one time, why don't you want to be the minority leader? Why don't you run for that position? And I've never forgotten what you said to me that day. And you said, you know, I don't need to be that leader to get things done. I can work behind the scenes and work my magic, my word, not hers, but I can work my magic, I can work my, I can get what I want done. Because sometimes there are others that always want to take the credit, and I don't care who gets the credit, I want to move the process. And, you know, the ladies that I get to sit with today on this stage are shining examples, even today, in the chaotic world of politics, of getting things done behind the scene and making sure that they're lasting. And they don't always get the credit for working behind the scenes. So the gamesmanship I don't like, but I kind of like. And you know, and if I go home and cry, you know, I'm not gonna let my husband ever talk to your mother, but when I go home and cry, my husband says something smart, like a smart aleck, like, "You worked really hard for this job, so no crying." Okay, You're right. I hate it too.
I hate it too. That he's right or that you're
That
required.
he's right.
No, you're going to end with that. You know, there are so many things that I love about this job. And I'm going to say two. I'm going to cheat. I love the people that I've met through this experience of being in the legislature, from colleagues to lobbyists to constituents, and I'm a people person, so that's an easy answer for me. The thing that I love that really kind of surprised me about myself is I love the policy. I love digging into policy and trying to make it better. And I didn't realize that I was going to be kind of have a focus on health issues, but I have, and I've beat my head against the wall for years working on some health issues, Medicaid expansion specifically, and I keep losing, but I love it anyway. I mean, I love what I'm doing and trying to change it to make it so that it works next year. And now I've gotten involved in a lot of foster care issues and trying to get into that, and how we can start to change the curve on that, because boy, we really need to. What I like the least, I think has already been mentioned, but I would say the frustration of people thinking that they are allowed to have their own set of facts. And you know, we will have testimony, we will have experts in the field, and everything, that the solution seems so obvious and common sense. And then there will be an ideological discussion that kind of sets it off to a different path, and truly people think that they're allowed to have their own set of facts, and so that's my frustration.
What has been one of your most meaningful experiences in public service, and why?
Meaningful.
Meaningful to you personally. Which one did you get the most satisfaction out of doing?
I've got one that it's constituent service. Those, for me, those are usually the most meaningful. Being able to help someone from home find a solution for a problem that they have, whether it's with getting their driver's license or a water issue. You know, was able to help the city of Beloit with a water issue that they had last year. But the most meaningful one for me was a young man that had he was having problems with his insurance.
Did you call us?
You weren't there yet. It was,
Oh, okay, then I don't care.
yeah. No, it's really kind of a sad story, but he had done everything right. He was intellectually disabled, but he was able to work, and so he did. He didn't take any state help, and he worked for the hospital just doing lawn work, and he had skin cancer and was to the point where he could no longer work, and so he needed to cash in all of his what do I want to say? Retirement. Yeah, the retirement plan that they had. Interesting rule, though, that he could cash in his retirement and pay for all of his medical expenses, but the hospital half of that could not be cashed in. So he was doing the pay down to get onto Medicaid, and then he made the application for Medicaid, and that $7,000 that he had sitting in a retirement plan that the hospital could not cash in kept him from being able to get Medicaid, and he needed surgery like within a week. And the fact that I knew who to call and could bypass all of the rules and call the Medicaid director and say, this is the issue, this is the problem, this guy needs surgery, and in 2 days, and he said, do it. He can have the surgery, and we will just bypass everything and approve him for Medicaid. So for me, that was the most fulfilling.
I would just add community mental health services. I'm on the board for the Burt Nash Community Center, and we have 26, community centers throughout the state of Kansas. And we also know that we're just very short on community mental health services all around the state. And mine is a twofold. I think one was the community mental health facilities had been cut, like over 30 million, and we know we needed services. And I also serve on social services budget, and we were able to really, when we didn't have a lot of money at that time, we have a lot more money than we used to have, but we looked at it in terms of trying to restore some of that money, because not all community health centers are equal. Some of them are very small. They're established by the legislature, and they did that because we needed to have services. And we were able to restore some of those services and to look at the executive director in terms of what he could actually do with this money was very helpful. And at the same time, we were restoring some money and hoping that it would last through omnibus and the wrap-up session and we get to keep the money. I had a woman call me and said, you don't know me, but my daughter was a student of yours at KU. And she said, maybe I should call you. She wasn't even in my district. She said, my mom is into the middle of dementia, and it's Alzheimer's, and we cannot find a place for her to stay. How will I find some place? I had no idea how to find a place, but I went back to the community mental health executive director. We started talking about it. We looked at the map to see where they were located. She wanted her to be here in Lawrence because she lived in Johnson County, and she had heard about Brandon Woods, and she had heard, but there were no there was no vacancies for her, and she was beside herself. She had to work, and her sister was out of state, and she didn't know what to do. Well, we went over to Brandon Woods, went to different places. We talked to all kinds of people about how can we get the services. And after a month, they were able to find a place for her temporarily until they could find another place, because what she wanted was safety for her mom. She wanted her not to be so frightened. She didn't want to be so frightened because she couldn't be there all the time, and who was going to really take care of her. And that's when I realized that for people who cannot place their parents, the parent who had been with them all their lives, what do you do? Where do you take them when you can't handle them? And if I hadn't been in the legislature, I would not have had any avenues as to how to really help someone. And that was rewarding to me, because I would want somebody to do that for my mother.
Sometimes I think it's surprising what sticks out in your mind. The one thing, obviously constituent services, as they have spoken very eloquently about, are very rewarding things. And there's hardly a week that goes by that you don't help someone figure out something, because state government is really complicated. Mm-hmm. That's not even talking about the federal side of things, but the state government's very complicated. But I think for me, sometimes you have lasting effects that you have no idea. You couldn't imagine it at the time. Early in 2000s, the mid 2000s, the prescription monitoring programs were just taking off in the states, and being a pharmacist, I was familiar with what some other states were doing and crafted some legislation. Was scared to death to craft the legislation. In my office, I keep the 4.5-inch, 5-inch binder of all the research that I did in making the legislation, and had no idea how hard it would be to carry a bill all the way through the process. But we ended up doing the prescription monitoring program. And if you're not familiar with that, it's about the scheduled drugs that are tracked, scheduled medications that are prescribed for people that are tracked at the pharmacy level. Your physicians
K-Trax?
can get into it.
Is that K-Trax?
K-Trax, yeah.
K-Trax.
Yeah, K-Trax. And you'll see signs up at your pharmacies that say we're participating in the K-Trax program. But, you know, back in the day, we didn't have the opioid crisis like we do today. And, you know, this allows emergency room doctors specifically to log on to the system. Can only log on, I don't want to scare anyone, you can only log on if you have a need to log on. If you show up in the emergency room for treatment, hopefully they're logging on to make sure that you haven't been in a Topeka hospital the night before with the same complaint, or a Johnson County hospital the night before, or the next night, or the next night. So it has stopped shoppers. I know it is hard to believe, but it stops doctor shoppers and pharmacy shoppers from motoring on and getting massive amounts of narcotics along the way. But when we looked at that, when we passed that legislation, no one, I don't think anyone would have predicted the tool that it would become in today's modern era for helping us be just one small piece of the puzzle, or one small piece that people can use for the opioid crisis. And when you get a look back at your record and what you've done, you know, I'm really proud that I was able. I mean, it took 165 people and a governor. Well, I think a couple of them voted against. I don't know what's wrong with those people, but a couple of them voted against it.
They have their own facts.
They have their own facts.
That's
Yeah, yeah. And their recollection of that history
there's a
would be a little
little bit,
different than
yes.
mine too. But the majority of people, the majority passed it, and the governor signed it into law. And, you know, to think that you're one small person that got to make a difference as we move forward.
Mine would be raising awareness on different issues involving the Native Americans. Right now, I'm currently working on a bill about the murdered and missing Indigenous women crisis that's happening across the country. And a lot of my colleagues come up to me and say, you know, I had no clue about this. And it gets hard because I'm the only Native American in the legislature. So, you know, I have to educate my colleagues first. And a lot of them just, you know, make me feel like I'm not alone. Because at times I think, how am I going to get this done? But they're always willing from both sides of the aisle to step in and help me in any way that they can. And one of the most meaningful things is the Native American veterans in our state. Some of them were getting illegally taxed by the Department of Revenue, even though they had lived on the reservation. They was getting illegally taxed, and this had been going on for 30 plus years. So a lot of their groups had come to me and asked how we could fix it, because as Native American people, we're not one to go in there and start demanding things. I remember when I first came into office with Governor Brownback, I had said, you know, where are the tribes? How come they're not at the Capitol? How come they haven't been invited? As Native people, we don't go unless we're invited. And he said, oh, well, I thought they wasn't here because they didn't have any issues. And so I said, no, we're going to start the first Native American Legislative Day here at the Capitol, and it will be every first Wednesday of February. He said, good, let's make it a law. And then he said, didn't your mom say she can make fry bread? I said, yeah. And he said, well, can she make it at the mansion? I said, you invite us, we'll come. I'll get the tribal leaders there. So that year we had like a kind of like each tribe came with their own traditional foods, and we shared it with the legislators and at the governor's mansion. I think that's the first time that's ever been done in the country. But I was very proud of the governor then. And so with the Veterans Bill, you know, as Native people, we have high rates and statistics as such as suicide, alcoholism, drugs, you name it, high school dropout rate. But yet we're still proud people, and we've sacrificed and we've served in our military. I think we're the highest ethnic race to step up and serve. And I'm even proud of my great-grandfather, William Big Snake, who is was a co-talker of the Ponca tribe. And the United States came to our humble home, and they presented us his medal. And so just, you know, my other grandpa, he is a veteran as well. And so just having so much respect for the veterans, I said something needs to be done. So we made a bill, we did a bill that they would pay this money back to these veterans that have been cheated out of the money. And we raised awareness about this issue. And I invited them to the Capitol, and they sat in the gallery and got to watch the process. And I was just so happy because, you know, whether Democrat, Republican, I always say I'm Native American first, you know. That's who I am, and that's who I'm proud to be. And so I try to get along with everybody. We might not see eye to eye on a lot of things, but, you know, when you need my help, I'm going to help you, regardless what party you're from. And so those relationships that have been built over the past 10 years that I've been there, they really stepped up and helped me. And I am so happy to say that everybody voted for that bill. And it went to the governor's desk, Governor Coyer then. And a lot of people were like, well, you know, you could have a traditional ceremony. I wouldn't ask. But I went to him and he said, sure, name a date and we'll get it done. And so the veterans were happy to come. We had a cake for them, cake and punch. The legislators came. It was a big moment, and I was so happy that I could help them, but I couldn't have done it by myself. And I'm just thankful for the other legislators that helped me.
And that is the key, free food.
I have one final question tonight, then I'm going to open it up to your Q&A. This has been an extraordinary program, and so I hope lots of you have questions. I've saved enough time for that. But ladies, my final question is, we work here at the Dole Institute. We have a student advisory board, and obviously that's composed of men and women. What advice would you give to young women looking to get involved in politics as candidates or as staff or as volunteers?
Do it. I mean, it's pretty simple. You know, I mean, there are so many ways. I don't think that people realize what, to begin with, what a campaign needs. You know, I know that we write letters and make phone calls and ask people for money because it does take there is a financial aspect to running a campaign. One yard sign's $3.52. And, you know, and we always seem to have to go through Halloween where we have to then get some more. But you know, there's so many things you can do. There are phone calls to make. There's walking neighborhoods. There's walking parades. I mean, who doesn't love to be in a parade? You know, put on my shirt and let's go. And toss candy. Kids love you. Adults love you. If you hand out palm cards, not so much. But there are so many ways to get involved in a campaign. Find somebody that you believe in, and you don't have to believe in them. You don't have to agree with them 100%. I think, Punka, we talked about this. Representative talked about it, that you know, you don't always have to agree 100%, but if you can find somebody that you can match up your ideological beliefs on the majority of issues, go for it. You know, I tell people that I've been married 45 years, and I love my husband dearly, but even my own husband does not agree with all of my votes. I don't know what's wrong with him. I've tried to work on that through the years, but, you know, and if you were to ask me to be honest, I don't agree with all of my votes that I've made. I wish I have more knowledge now. I have a different perspective. The world has changed in 14 years significantly on some issues. And I've moved right along with the world. So don't just hold one vote against any candidate. But there's so many ways to get involved with a candidate. We love our volunteers, putting up yard signs, walking door to door with us. There's just a ton of work to do in a campaign. I think I think people would be amazed to see what a candidate does during a campaign cycle. But you actually said it in the last response to your to the question about the governor said, well, I thought everything was fine because nobody told me about it. Well, I bet there's a lot of issues that we all think is just fine because we don't know about the issue. You have to advocate for what's important to you, and you need to get involved now. There is no better time to get involved in a campaign or politics than now. We need your help because don't stay on the sidelines. Other people will speak for you. If you're not, what was that saying? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Don't be on the menu.
I would just say, for me, I would like to encourage other women to run for office because, I'm just going to be honest. I grew up poor. I grew up without. Like I said, I went to, get free coats, or whatever I needed. But that made me who I am right now. So when there's an issue that comes in the legislature, I can have a say in it. And we need more diverse people from all backgrounds, from lower income communities. We need people from, that represent all kind of different walks of life. And I always say, if I can do it, you can do it. I didn't grow up rich and, having everything handed to me. I had to fight for everything that I have. I remember one time they overlooked me. I had a 3.8 GPA, and I didn't even know about the National Honor Society, but they didn't include me in it. And somebody had said, well, did you get your cords for graduation? And I said, what are cords? So I always had to fight and stand up for myself. And I went to that teacher and said, why wasn't I included in this? I have the grades, I should have these cords. And it was a little struggle, but I got them. So it was always, I always say, when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of role models. I knew what I wanted to do. So in 8th grade, I wrote a paper about it, that I wanted to be governor someday, because I had been writing to the governor about different issues in my school. And then growing up, I went to the Indian Health Service, and it's very poor health care. We have the doctors that nobody wants. Our technology is very low. I always say, prisoners get better health care than we do. When I was growing up, I always asked my mom, why do I have to sit here for 8 hours with an earache in the ER? So I always questioned things like that when I was little, and my mom said, when you grow up, you can get educated and you can come back and help your people. And so I always had that in my mind. So in 8th grade, I wrote my paper essay that I wanted to be governor someday. And my teacher wrote me back, and she said, I set a realistic goal. And it devastated me because there was red marks all over my paper. But I got strong, and I said, someday I'm going to show her. And so I wrote back on my paper, someday I'll invite you to my governor's ball. And the crazy thing about it is that a couple years ago, I heard from her, and she said, I need help getting my driver's license. Thank God I'm a spiritual person, as I prayed about it. But I helped her get her driver's license. But that's what I want to say to the young women is sky's the limit. Don't never let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. you know, if you have your mind, you're focused, just go for it. And that's how I am here today.
I hope you wrote her back on your official stationery.
You want to? Okay, I'll go. I tell college students and junior high that they need to think about the women who fought for over 70 years to get the right to vote, and that we just sort of take it for granted. They need to think of those people because of all the things that we can do in this country. The vote is the most important. The other part of looking at the most important being the vote, it's power. And when I was in college, I was told that my power would come from my vote. I don't think I really understood that at the time, but my power would come from my vote. Now I know what it means. Whether you have $1 million and I have 500, our vote really counts the same. If it was not power, why were people killed because they wanted to vote? Why did they not want them to read or to write? My vote is my power if I use it. If I don't use it, I'm giving it away. And when I'm talking with women and we're talking about why they should vote, because that is your voice. You don't have to be elected to any office. You just have to articulate what you want and go and vote. And when you don't do that, especially if I look at African Americans, then you're not honoring all those people before you. And for women to have gone through over 70 years to vote, to give us the power, we should use it.
Go ahead, Susan.
I tried to, I told her to go before me, and then I got to follow that.
I'm sorry, baby.
So yeah, after they all had such great answers, I'm going to be Debbie Downer here. You know, I would encourage anyone, any young person, to get involved. But you know, the one thing that we were talking about this at dinner, the one thing that you can't do in the Kansas legislature is serve and make a living. And you've got to realize that when you're going to do it, it's basically a volunteer position. We're paid $88 a day. It doesn't matter that I work from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. It's $88 a day. And the young people just can't afford to do it and raise a family. And we would like, it's hard to propose a raise for yourself. So that's why we continue the way that we are. But we have a lot of really young people, like right out of college, and we've got a lot of retirees. And for women, it's hard, like in my situation, that I really did need to raise my family first. I'm not one that could commute back and forth and miss all of their activities. I needed to have my youngest in college before I started. But the pay is an issue as far as attracting, our brightest young people to the positions.
And that $88 a day is only on the days that you serve. It's not year-round.
Oh, no. Yeah, and it's, it's budgeted for 90 days, Outside of session, we are allowed a small stipend that we receive every couple of weeks. That was, in the olden days, it was for stamps, I think. But
I think she was going to say something else, but she changed her mind.
But it is a year-round position, you know.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
we're only in Topeka, work in session, but I do something every day for this job outside of session. And some days I put in a full day. And we have interim committees and we have national committees that we serve on and organizations we're involved in, and then a lot of constituent services. So, yeah, you're right.
Okay, we're going to open it up to your questions. If you have a question, you want to raise your hand, and Haley or Ashley will come by. Please just ask one question. Make it fairly brief. I'd like to get it to as many as possible. You can ask the panel or you can ask an individual. Do you have somebody, Haley? We'll start with you.
Thank you for being here tonight. Today, Senator Warren bravely stepped aside from her run for the presidency, and she said, if I say that the problem with my campaign had to do with sexism, I'm paraphrasing her words, then I'd be called whiny. But if I said it didn't, there are zillions of women who would ask, what planet do you live on? Would you comment about that?
But I'm trying to think. She said, if I said there was sexism, I didn't quite understand how you were saying it. So if I said there was sexism in my campaign.
She said the fact that her campaign didn't run was partly due to sexism. If she said that, she'd be called whiny. If she...
Oh, I got it. No,
Yeah.
she'd be telling the truth. I mean, she'd be telling the truth, you know, because there is a double standard. In fact, I think it's more than a double standard. And so, yeah, she would be telling the truth about that. But the whiny part comes in. It's because whenever we say something about an issue, instead of them taking it seriously, it's like she's whining, you know. I think of all the people I know who may have a tendency to whine, it would not be Elizabeth Warren. You know, it's not whining. Whether you like her or not is the issue. She is factual. She tells you how it is and what you're supposed to do. And sometimes telling the truth for some people seems like whining. But I don't think she is a whiner, but she's judged by a different standard. And maybe one of these days we'll get beyond that, of what a woman should do or what a man does. And if a man would say the same thing, they would say, oh, how strong he is. Look how determined he is. If a woman says it, you get the B word in a heartbeat. But we're getting smart now. We're using the B word first ourselves.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
No. I'm good.
I'm good too.
I would add that and she's not she's just the last female to end the race.
Yeah.
That there are no females left, and looking back at Hillary Clinton in the race, you know, there were things that are pointed out. I guess to follow Barbara's point, they're about how their voice sounds. You know, that Hillary Clinton was too shrill. Well, when was the last time we've heard them talk about a man's voice? You know, that, and the clothes that they wear, and their weight.
And the hairdo, thank you.
The hairdo, yeah. It's judged on a different standard.
Okay, do we have another question somewhere? Gosh, there were a lot of hands a minute ago. Where'd they all go?
They were all about
Yeah,
Elizabeth.
one back here.
Hi, I have a question for all of you. Whenever you're struggling to get through a day, what do you like dig down in to keep going? What keeps you going when maybe life isn't going your way? you're not getting legislation passed or something just not working for you?
Go ahead.
I just try to remember that it'll be worth it in the end, and that there have been a lot of failures. I think Representative Concanon talked about that you get up every day and you think this is going to be a great day. My legislation is going to pass, or it's going to be a good vote on the floor, or there's going to be somebody I can help with the insurance department that really needed it, and you just have to keep putting one foot forward. But there are days when I think mostly it is what has been talked about. It's after you've spent all day on the floor, or you've been at work really late, or you've not, and you're just tired. And but I also know that no matter what happened that day before, the next morning the sun's going to come up, and I got to get back to work.
What helps me is I pray about things that are just out of my control, out of my hands. I feel good walking away that I gave it my 100%, and I leave the rest to our Creator's hands and His hands. And on the weekends, I participate in a lot of our ceremonies, and I'm a Native American dancer, so I have healing going back into the circle, put my tribal regalia dress on, and it helps me refocus. So when I'm having a bad day, I go and I try to spend time with myself and try to pray, and I think about things, and it puts me back into perspective to come back the next day with another ideal or another way, that because not all is always lost. There's different ways that you can kind of do things, and so I'll think about it and then I'll go back the next day with another plan. But I don't give up.
All right, I'm not going to make it last this time.
Yeah, because you're going to say something really wonderful. For me, I have created a safe space in my office. So I like to go to my office. I've got family pictures. I have a bouquet of flowers that my husband sends me flowers every Monday while I'm in Topeka.
Get out. I'm having Mike call Craig. And you're already in trouble, Mr. Ballard.
If you ever came to my office to visit me, you might have known that. But
I thought they were fake. I thought they were artificial
No, let me tell you,
flowers.
she has the coldest office in the Capitol. She's trying to keep those flowers alive.
it is
Man.
cold. It is cold in there, but not for the flowers. But yeah, it started my first week that he sent flowers, and I have this cute little elephant container, and they bring a liner for it every week on Monday. I don't think that when he started this, he thought I would be here 8 years, but they're still coming. And anyway, he tells me, he just wants me to know that he misses me and that he loves me. And so it's a reminder when I go there and I have my flowers and I can think, this is a real person. This is what reality is. That what we're doing here is sometimes a circus. And so that, and then I have one other little thing that I do is I have a box that where I put notes that I get from people that are thank you or just a special note. I think a lot of people probably have that kind of box, and I will go through and look at some of those if I'm having a bad day, and it's a good pick-me-up.
My files say kudos.
Yeah.
And I just put them all in there, and then like if I'm taking them out randomly, I'm not so bad. I don't care what they said about me. I'm not so bad.
Okay, now wow, I'm Barbara.
I'm going to laugh. I would have to say I have to go to prayer. Because sometimes there's decisions and you have all the facts from both sides, the pros and the cons. But sometimes you have to say, okay, now I understand this, but then now help me figure out what to do. So prayer becomes a constant. I even pray on the floor sometimes because you thought you were prepared and then you see some of the most outrageous kind of behavior. You go, ooh, give me strength, you know? And so you just look at it. So prayer will help. But the other is I have to remember, why did you knock on 3,000 doors? Why were you walking in the rain, the cold, the heat? Because you wanted to make a difference. You didn't tell anybody at the door, I will do this if they vote the way I want them to vote, if things go my way. You never said that. You say, vote for me and I will represent you to the best of my ability. So I have to always ask myself, why did I do this? And if I lose because of numbers, I can't prevent that because the number beat me and I lost. But if I allow someone to dampen my spirit, to take away some of the excitement I feel for being elected, and if I let them control that, then they win twice. I refuse to let someone win twice when I can control one of those. And I remind myself of that this job comes with the good, the bad, and the ugly. But my job is to represent my constituents. And I want them to be proud of what I do. And as a result of that, I can pick myself up, and when all else fails, I can go home to that man right there. And we can talk about it. And he's going to always be on my side. Or else.
Good one.
Okay, we have a question right here.
Oh, yes, he does.
So as much as women are encouraged to stand together and work together, there's always going to be those select few who will tear other women down to build themselves up. What would you say to the women who feel like their voice isn't being heard in a crowd of other women?
I would have to say for those women that like to tear others down, my training would say I'd have to say life must have been really hard for them. That they have to get themselves up by putting you down. And sometimes you can't do it by yourself. You either have to have professional help, have to work through it, or you have to be brave enough to confront that person and find out why do they do what they do. But if you don't want to talk to them at all, then you have to decide how are they affecting you. And if you don't like the way they are affecting you, you have to make that change. But there's people out there more than willing to meet with you, to talk with you, to help you get your courage up, to build your own self-esteem, and then ignore them.
I would say pray for them. That's what I do, because they don't understand why you feel the way you do or your story. So I'd be lying up here if I said that never happened to me. It's happened to me. I've been disappointed a lot. Just catty remarks or smart remarks women have said to me, and it does hurt. But you don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know how they're, kind of things that they're going on in life. And so I was taught to always pray for them and then move on and focus and stay focused on the prize, because at the end of the day, he knows, he sees you. You're doing it with a good heart. He knows. A lot of times we see people that do it because You know, they like to get in the limelight all the time, or they like to get the glory. And that's not what it's supposed to be about. And he sees everything. That's how I feel. And I'm not perfect. But, you know, when I don't know what to do, then I turn to my spiritual side about that. And I pray for them. And like Representative Ballard said, there's always going to be somebody to help you. You just have to ask. There'll always be women that will back you. But you just have to ask for a hand. You have to ask for their support, and they will be there. And so that's how I feel about that.
A long time ago, when I was a young pharmacist, I was a student, and I was doing my internship, and a very, very grumpy elderly woman came up to the counter, and she was mad she was just scowling and frowning, and just was not in a good place. And I maybe said underneath my breath on my way to the counter, oh boy, this is going to be fun. And I was a student at the time, and the head pharmacist took me over into a corner, and I thought, great, now I'm going to get it from her, and I'm going to get it from him. And he said, you never know where she's coming from. Maybe she hasn't heard from her kids for 3 or 4 months. Maybe she got a terrible diagnosis at the doctor. Maybe her husband did. Maybe, and he just went on with about 30 different things. And I felt about this tall. And so I went up to the counter, and he said, he goes, kill them with kindness, no matter what. Go up to the counter, have a smile on your face. You might see that smile reflected back at you if you just do that. And and that's a little bit different than people putting you down. I do understand that, but I think treat people like the way you want to be treated, and sometimes you can turn that heart, or you can turn that situation into a positive, and maybe even be a friend or figure something out. But it's kind of hard sometimes in our political world sometimes to turn the other cheek, or to be pleasant after you've gone through a really hairy time in a political battle. But usually it's the right thing to do, because civility has been lost in our world. And we have to, if people like us have to start leading the way to turn that civility around and to make it so that we can have conversations that are meaningful and that can make a difference.
I think that there are women who believe that there needs to be, that there's a token woman in leadership, or that filters to the top, and that if that they want to be that person, that they need to try to hold others down. And I had a colleague, since I've been in the legislature, tell me one time she said, I'm going to be the first female Speaker of the House. And I said, really? So am I.
Must have been a Monday when you got the flowers.
Which, by the way, I never want to be Speaker of the House. But there are, in the House, there are 6 leadership positions, and it just seems like there's always just, since I've been in there, there's one, as far as the Republicans, there's one female. And I don't know that it's on purpose, but it just seems that that's just the way it is. And so people who are like that, you work with everybody, and I don't necessarily ignore them, but I just surround myself with good people, with people who are, these ladies are all my friends, and
I don't know, after those flowers, I don't know.
You know about that. You were in my office.
I know it.
But surround yourself with people who that are supportive, and I think most of us are.
If I could comment on that. You know, that was a brave question, by the way.
That was.
That was, and I'm sitting here looking at you as we're answering. That was a brave question. For whatever reason. But what I'm going to focus on now, because you've been looking at each other, is, you know, sometimes nasty people really don't know how to handle someone who is nice. And sometimes they're jealous. But by being jealous, they have to put you down so as not to come face to face with it. So if you have somebody like that in your life, let you and I talk.
I have time for one last, let's right here. This is going to be our last question. I'm sorry, I've run out of time.
Hope it's an easy one.
In regards to the double standard that was mentioned a little bit ago, I can appreciate all of the various aspects of frustration that women have to go through. But as we're seeing more women being involved, do you think that the women's voice collectively is starting to have more respect, more weight, more credibility? Not that it didn't have credibility, but more. And because of that, do you think it's getting easier? It's getting easier to for your voice to be heard and to recruit new people, and that maybe someday, maybe there won't be a double standard?
Let me answer part of it, and then the House can pick it up. The answer to your question is yes. And I'll just use, I have other examples, but I'm only going to use the House. In what year was it, 16? 2016, we had to figure out what to do about our money, about taxes in the House, about whether or not we were going to pass a tax increase, were we going to put 334,000 people back on the rolls so that we would have some money in the state. And we formed a women's caucus in the House. And part of that women's caucus, we met, once or twice a week, Punkawi? Once or twice a week? And part of that caucus was to get all the women who wanted to participate to become knowledgeable about taxes, how to explain taxes, how to be able to tell their constituents what to do in that instance. And as a result of us working, we were able to invite the men to come in, and we explained about the taxes, and we did a combination of things, and when it came time for us to vote on issues, the men had a newfound respect because they hadn't seen that happen before. But it was women collectively getting there, putting ourselves out, being willing to do it, to meet and to take on that task. So yes, in terms of the House and the results we got were very positive. But the more women get together and the more they talk about what we need to do together, and that win-win I mentioned in the beginning, that is where our respect is going to come from. And if you look at all those new women that were elected in 2018 to Congress, those women came because they went out in droves and they were elected. And the more women we get elected, and the more they see it, and regardless of what you think about Nancy Pelosi, she has given that strength there of what you need to do and how to respond. And she is the third most important person in Washington, D.C. And that's all I'll say about that.
I wasn't there for that. I mean, I wasn't in the House for that. But I do think that, you know, what I heard when I first started on this when I first lost my mind and ran for office was that women don't have as thick a skin as men do, that men have thicker skin, and that men can, women take everything too personal. Women do, and we're too emotional, or it's that time, or, I mean, we have all heard all of those things, and they are hurtful when they're said to us. But, I can tell you as I sit here tonight that I have survived some incredibly horrible primaries by my own party.
Yes, you have.
I have a notebook of one in 2012. There were 29 negative postcards sent out on about me. I was put on the top of a rubber stamp. That was one of my favorites. I was a puppet. I mean, they were really hurtful. The people that hurt the most were the people that loved me the most. My mother, my husband, my kids, but my mom especially said, why do they say these things about you? This is just not true. And I said, Mom, you just got to turn off the radio and don't listen to those ads and bring me your mail. I think those things are very hurtful. But what it proved to me was that I do have thick enough skin to survive it, and not only survive it, to thrive with it, and to move along, and to say, you know what, I'm there after that primary election. I only needed to win by one vote. I know, landslide Vicky, won by 105. But, I mean, you only need one. So in comparison, 105 was 104 more than I needed. But I think that those things do make us stronger. But I think we'd be remiss, especially sitting where we are today, if the four of us, I think we would all acknowledge that, the Nancy Landon Casabons, the Elizabeth Doles of the world, we stand on their shoulders. They have made it possible for people like us to sit before you today, because they really did blaze the trail for us to serve and to be successful. And, we've learned a lot from those ladies, and we have learned a lot from the people that have served before us. And I, for one, am very thankful. But I'm hoping that someone like the young people in this audience today stand on our shoulders and achieve even more, and continue the progress, because there's a long way to go.
I just agree with that. Going into politics, you do have to have thick skin. There's a lot of things that can be said to you that can tear you down or make you feel bad, but you just never give up, and you try to remember who you're fighting for. A lot of times I walk away at night from the Capitol and I think, gosh, if I wasn't at that table, what would happen? If I didn't bring up this issue or this perspective, or if, I called the tribes to come and testify on an important bill that was going to harm their tribe or tribal members. I'm really glad that I'm here. So you have to always remember that. And then you have to build like the sisterhood ship, you have to, so that they can help speak up for you if something ever happens. And then the men will I don't want to mess with her because they're all going to come after me. And that's, in Caucus, a woman will raise a point, but if you see her getting chewed on, then another woman will speak up for her or speak. So it's a sisterhood ship, and I'm not just talking about with the Democratic women. It's all of us. In our little groups, if I hear any woman, being talked about or something, I will chime in and I'll say something. And I'll say, well, why? Imagine being in her shoes. Look how she's holding herself. And whatnot. And that's how we have to uplift each other too. And so, I'm really proud to say that I have a lot of sisters in the legislature that I can always depend on, and not just, with politics, but sometimes I'll say, you want to go grab a movie, or you want to go eat ice cream, or late at night, or and you know, they'll be like, sure, and then, you know, we really get to know each other. Or, you know, hey, I'm gonna go check out a store in Kansas City. You wanna ride with me? I mean, you know, so we build those relationships. Everything that happens, it kind of happens outside the Capitol, and you know, when we all eat together and we kind of get these ideals and these plans, and then, well, let's present it tomorrow, and this is a great idea. And yeah, I wouldn't survive if it wasn't for my sisters there in the legislature, because, you know, I can always count on them when they say, hey, you guys need to think about this. You know, what she's saying is right or true. And, oh, yeah, well, you know, and then, like I said, okay. I've seen that happen a lot of times. So I'm just thankful for these women. I look up to them. And whenever they go to the mic, I know whatever they have to say, it's going to be important. So I really respect that. And I'm very thankful that I get to work with them.
I would just add that I don't like to be asked to do things just because I'm a female. I want to be asked because they think that I can do the job. I want to chair a committee because they think that I'm knowledgeable on this subject and I run a good meeting. And last week I got to chair the committee of the whole, and explain what that is. Oh, explain what that is. So when we are, we have committee meetings all day long, but when we all come together and meet on the House floor, then we become one great big committee, and so it's called Committee of the Whole. So the speaker is no longer in the speaker's chair. That every day that we go into the Committee of the Whole, then somebody else is appointed to take that chair, and they become the chair for the day. So, I've been kind of in trouble the last few years. I haven't been asked to do it for a while, so I felt very honored when I was asked last week, and but I didn't realize that we hadn't had a female in the chair yet this year.
That's
right. It didn't occur to me till I was in the chair, and one of the representatives came to the mic and said, they always, acknowledge you, and they said, "Thank you, Madam Chair," and it's very nice to be able to say Madam Chair. And so then I started thinking about it, and there had not been a female in the chair yet this year. So I hope that's not why they asked me, but...
I'd take it anyway.
Yeah, I take it anyway. But the whole thing about getting respect is being able to command respect. Just be truthful always. Don't argue needlessly. There's just basic rules that to be a good legislator that you want to be. But then sometimes when you're being treated like you're a good little girl, every once in a while I have to get crosswise with somebody, and I give them the sweetest butt chewing they've ever had, but you just sometimes then that creates the line of respect, and things go a lot better. Like yesterday morning in appropriations.
Bless your little heart.
I witnessed that one too. That was a good one.
I don't guess anyone wants to tell the story. No, never mind. Never mind.
If this was closed, we'd tell the story. But we don't want it out there what happened.
Okay, this has been a wonderful evening. Please join me in thanking these ladies for a great program.
Bill, since we're here, I really just want all of you to know how proud I am of my three colleagues. From working with her when she was in the Senate, and with Susan Kincannon and Ponkawee, when we were choosing these, I was looking in terms of how could you get the most diverse? And at the same time, the people I knew, not that we don't have others in our house, that really have a good heart and also are dedicated to their constituents. And I'm just so glad these three accepted. So
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Our next program is a couple or 3 weeks. There's nobody here to tell me exactly what it was. Away and will be on President Eisenhower. So we hope you can join us. So thanks for coming out.